G'day guys, Shawnee from Life and Tennis. In today's video, I'll be recapping my last two rounds of Pennant competition. So the club competition that I play here in Melbourne, Australia. So yeah, rounds 2 and 3 will be a combined video. So I'll firstly recap my round 2 matches in a pre-recorded video, and then following from that video I'll be recapping my round 3 match. The reason why I've combined the two is because our round 3 match ended up being a washout, but we still managed to get our doubles match out. So without further ado, here is my round 2 analysis. So yeah, this week was, given it was the even week, it was the best of 3 doubles. And yeah, me and my partner actually got up 6-love, 6-1. So yeah, very comprehensive victory. Definitely something that we've been focusing a lot on, me and my partner Rick, is our doubles IQ and just being very aggressive at, coming into the net, shortening points, things like that. Because one thing we've noticed from playing with each other for such a long time now is that all the best teams that we've played against over the years are always teams that are like actively seeking to get into the net, and particularly trying to create opportunities for themselves rather than just kind of expecting your opponents to just like hand you simple volleys and things like that. So one of the pieces of advice we gave to each other before the match was be comfortable in uncomfortable positions on the court. So, like your opponent's not just going to hand you a sitting volley for you to put away, right? You have to kind of create that opportunity for yourself. And one way to do that is to be aggressive on your ground strokes from the back of the court and then come in, on the second or third shot, but be prepared to hit an approach volley from like mid-court, but just be very clear in where you're hitting your volley. I mean, most of the time you're hitting every shot cross-court, as is the case with doubles, with occasionally, it's good to throw in a down-the-line ground stroke just to test out the net player on the other side. But yeah, generally the decision is kind of made for you, which does make the strategy much more simple. And it's just a matter of trying to get into the net before your opponents do. And me and my partner Rick did that very, very well. We were always actively coming into the net. Our opponents did that as well, but I feel like whenever we got to the net, we were much more comfortable than them. We played 2 younger kids. I would say that they're probably no older than 18 or 19 as a guess. And often what I find, me and Rick are both 37, and what I've noticed is whenever you're playing younger kids, younger guys, you tend to find that inexperienced players focus more on singles. They're more single specialists. They're not as strong in doubles. Whereas you're playing, slightly older guys, they're much more comfortable in doubles courts. So I think, whenever we go out and we're playing players that are, in the early 20s or younger even, we always find that we generally we'll go into it feeling like we've got the edge, that we've got the advantage, where we're pretty comfortable. Whereas when you're playing sort of more experienced guys that, similar to who we played last week, they probably were, the 2 guys we played last week wouldn't have been much older than their, maybe one of them would have been, say, late 20s or mid to late 20s. The other one might have been like early 30s, but they definitely felt much more comfortable in the doubles court, which is why it was, I guess, a tougher match. So yeah, this week, not too much to really comment on or analyze. To be honest, me and my partner did just about everything right. We were aggressive from the back of the court. We came into the net. We volleyed really well. We served well. Didn't really miss a beat, to be honest. And even the game that we lost in the second set, it was 40-love on their serve, and we even got that game to juice. So we could have even potentially won the match love and love. So yeah, not really too much to comment on. I will also say, I probably should have mentioned it earlier, that we played on a surface called Ontakar. Now in Australia, Ontakar is a fairly common surface at most tennis clubs, but I know around Europe, I'm not too familiar whether Ontakar is actually used. I know it's a French term, but I'm not too familiar whether it's actually used at a lot of tennis clubs around the world. I know, clay is more common. So Ontakar is probably more similar to a clay type surface, but it's a little bit different to clay. It probably plays slightly faster than clay. I think clay is still probably the slowest surface in the world, and there's not that many pure clay courts in Australia. So yeah, we played on Ontakar on the weekend. And yeah, then I played my singles match, which again was the first to 8 game set, and I ended up losing that one 8-5. Now that match, I was actually up 5-3 after being down 2-love. So I started pretty slow, managed to get my way back into it. It was 5-3 up, and then yeah, from 5-3 up, unfortunately lost the last 5 games in a row. And what I found in that match was, it was one of those unusual circumstances. I'm sure a lot of tennis players out there are familiar with this. but I just felt suddenly tight for no reason whatsoever, just lacked confidence in just about all my shots, particularly my forehand, which is normally my strength. So I started dumping forehands into the net, and even I was hitting forehands too long. So it was that combination of trying to adjust, knowing my confidence level was down, realizing that if I tried to swing too hard at the ball, I was going to go, hit the ball a meter out. Whereas if I sort of went under, if I slowed it down a little bit, the ball was, like I was dumping it into the net. So it was one of those unusual situations where I just kind of out of nowhere just started to feel really tight, like 5-3 up. There's still a fair way to go. I still had to win 3 more games to win the set. And it was a very winnable match. The guy I played was one of the guys I played in doubles, relatively solid, but still, he was an aggressive player, big lefty, hit a big shot, but he was also quite inconsistent. So it was one of those types of players where what was working for me early on to get to for that 5-3 lead was basically just keeping the ball in play. A very, very simple strategy. So more of a like a defensive strategy. Normally I'm quite an aggressive player, but I'm also quite good at adapting to being defensive, especially when I'm playing often I'll find when I'm playing players that are ultra aggressive, I'll often be the one that sits back and waits for them to make the mistake. Whereas if I'm playing a more, sort of passive player, I generally am quite patient, but I do like to finish points. So I will try to eventually find a way to, either be aggressive, up the ante on my ground strokes, or come into the net and close with a volley. So I found that when I was being relatively defensive and almost like more of a counter-attacky or a counter-puncher style, it worked for me the first sort of, from 5-3 up. But from that point, I just somehow lost confidence. I don't know whether it was that I was trying to up the ante a bit when I didn't need to, or whether it was just one of those random, like, just confidence moments where I just, just got tight and I just couldn't work my way back into it. One of the strategies that I might utilize next time, so one of my big learning points from that match is I either have 2 decisions at that point if I'm 5-3 up and I'm starting to get a bit tight. Either I'm playing safe margins and I'm just slowing down the pace of the ball and hitting, say, just down the middle of the court and just see what happens. Or I can alternatively switch rackets, which I didn't do on the weekend. I didn't switch rackets, and I think that might have helped. So right now I'm using the Speed MP, which is basically the racket that Yannick Sinner uses. Whereas I have an older model Head Prestige MP, which was my old racket before switching across to the Speed. So I feel like I could have very easily switched to the Prestige, and maybe that would have helped with confidence. I actually had a hit today with a mate, and what I found today was we'd played 3 tiebreaks. I won the first one, lost the next 2, and again that similar situation of like just feeling like I was lacking confidence a bit. And I actually did switch to the Prestige, and I actually ended up winning the next tiebreak and then switching back to the Speed MP and won the next one after that. So strange situation where I felt like it was almost like I was going back to a comfortable racket. Felt like I, had more control on my shots, and potentially also I threw the rhythm of my opponent, which again, I guess it's a two-way thing of like the benefit of maybe changing rackets is you can get confidence from, using an old reliable racket that, you always play well with, especially if it's got the right strings in there, because I think strings are a big factor to how you feel. Not just the racket itself, it's what type of strings and what tension. And the other factor is how it affects your opponent, because your opponent's going to have a different ball coming towards them. So that also could throw their rhythm and their momentum. So if I'd done that on the weekend, I'm quite confident I would have won that match. Even without doing that, it was definitely still a very winnable match. I definitely should have won that match, but still learning, still positives and still some learnings to take into my next round. So next round, it is a long singles round. So I'll be ready for that. And I'm playing quite a strong player who I lost to last time. I played him last year. So definitely will take those learnings into that match this weekend. My mentality is basically going to be just have nothing to lose and just try to, keep the ball deep, play safe margins. And I've always got that backup strategy if I just feel like my confidence is not quite there using my racket, because the Speed MP, I've only been using them for just over a year or just under a year maybe. And I feel like I've started to get comfortable with them, but maybe there's still some little issues that I'm trying to iron out, which can affect my confidence at times. So but I know I've always got the Prestige there as a backup. Okay, so round 3. So this week was a long singles week, given that it was an odd number, round 3. So it meant that the singles match was a best of 3 set singles with a super tiebreak in the third set, and a super set doubles. So first 8 game doubles. Sorry. So yeah, I was only scheduled to play doubles this week, and originally the forecast wasn't looking great. So we didn't actually think we were going to get on. We were playing a team called MCC Glen Iris. And they, like Royal South Yarra, have Ontakar tennis courts, which, as I've explained before, is very similar to clay. And the forecast ended up not being that bad in the morning. It was very overcast, it did rain a little bit, but we managed to get our doubles match on. And yeah, from the very first game, not from the very first game, but from probably the third game, we ended up getting broken, and we were basically playing catch up from that point on. So yeah, unfortunately, my partner, when his first service game, he ended up starting his service game with 2 double faults, which is super, super rare. He never double faults. And yeah, so very, very highly unusual start to the game. And unfortunately, because we got broken in that game, we ended up playing catch up after that. So yeah, the positive for the set was we stayed strong and we kept our head up, even though we did face a lot of break points. We managed to hold all of our serves after that point for the most part. So, and a lot of their service games, that they flew through their service games pretty quickly. They were serving very, very well, hitting their spots very, very well. So there were a lot of games where they won to love or to 15, and we weren't even really able to get a return back. Or if we got a return, they closed the net pretty well. So they were a very, very solid doubles team, probably the strongest doubles team we've played so far. But we always knew we were in with a chance. In fact, we always believed that, we were the better team, or we could be the better team. But unfortunately for us, our serving and probably even our net game was okay, but I definitely think the match was won and lost on serve and at the nets. I think that our ground game was very solid, but our volleys at times weren't always, up to scratch. So, and that's for both of us. That's not not sort of pointing the blame at my partner. I definitely, missed a lot of volley opportunities that I could have taken. But yeah, we hung in there and we managed to at least keep the scoreboard ticking over, which I think was the theme for the set. And it's something that we've definitely gotten better at, me and my partner Rick, over the years. And we mentioned this after the match, that even though we lost, there was a lot of positives. It didn't feel like that bad a loss, even though we definitely felt like, we were in with a sniff, and there's definitely lots of takeaways, from the match. So one of the biggest positives from the match, however, is we did actually end up breaking back at one point, and I think that was when we were 5-3 down. We broke back to get to 5-4, but unfortunately we ended up getting broken straight back. So Rick ended up getting his serve broken again at 6-4. So yeah, that was a bit frustrating for us. But then we ended up breaking again. The scoreboard ticked over to 7-5, and then we actually broke back to get to 7-6. So the pressure at this point was probably the fact that we knew our opponents only needed one more game to win the set. We knew that, they knew that. So I think that's maybe where, if it was, say, let's just say, for example, the score was 3-2, I think I would have consolidated the break on my serve. But because it was 7-6, the pressure was still on us, because we had to hold serve to make sure we stayed in the match. And if we held serve, it would have been 7-all and it would have been game on. And there was no point during the set that we were ever in the lead. I think the only time we were even equal was just at the very start when it was 1-all. They held serve and I held serve. So that was the only time we were actually equal with them. The rest of the time they did have that scoreboard pressure, which definitely, I think, did take its toll by the end. And that last service game probably wasn't my finest service game. I don't think I double faulted, but just a few uncharacteristic errors. I missed a forehand into the net. I was very aggressive on my forehand for the whole match, and it actually was really, really satisfying. It really paid off. For 80% of the match, it was very, very effective, my forehand. Although I do feel like my backhand at times, I wasn't able to keep it away from the net player. Maybe wasn't as aggressive as I'd like to have been on it. But at the same time, they were a very aggressive doubles team, and they were very handy at the net, very good volleys. So it was very tricky to keep the ball away from them. They did kind of force you to hit the ball hard or cross court, or go for more and more angle, which also then put you at risk of missing because they're putting the pressure on you to keep the ball cross court. So yeah, they were a strong team. We definitely were in it. We definitely felt like we were capable of beating them, if not a better team. But in the end, they probably served better and saved volleyed better than us. But we were there. We were in there with a sniff, and we definitely gave ourselves a good chance to win that match. So the takeaways from that match, first of all, on the positive side, as I mentioned before, we never dropped our head. We stayed in it. We hung in there. We fought it out. And I think that shows that our strong mental game, that we're able to not let a few mistakes, a few errors get to us. We didn't let our anger or frustration get the better of us. And the other positive is the fact that we did actually break back a couple of times, and we had opportunities to consolidate our break and basically get it back on an even keel. I really feel like it was a match of momentum. They had the momentum the whole time. I think if we were able to consolidate our breaks, we would have completely changed that momentum, and I think we would have ended up on top, honestly. So that was the positive for the day. The room for improvements, because I never like to use the word negative, the room for improvements for our match. From my point of view, I do feel like I could get a bit more active at the net. I feel like I let my partner Rick hit too many ground strokes when I probably could have poached at various points during the games, during the rallies. And I think a lot of that is just to do with the fact that I maybe need to just change my position on the court at the net. So what I generally tend to do is I tend to protect or guard the line, just in case, with the fear that my opponents might rip a shot down the line. And I guess there's always that risk that could happen. But I think really if I was to, evaluate the, like the risk reward, like the payoff of me standing a bit more in the middle of the net, is that yes, I'm leaving a bit more room down the line, but it is still a risk to hit down the line. You're hitting over the highest part of the net, and it's less surface area that you're aiming for. So it's still, a risk that like if your opponent does go for that shot, there is a chance they might miss that shot. They might hit the net, or they have to hit higher over the net, so they've got to hit with a bit more spin. So if they hit it a bit flatter, there's a chance they might miss that shot. Or if they're hitting with more spin, then even if they clear the net, there's a chance that my partner will still be able to get to that shot. So, and also I've still got to back myself that I can cover the line, that I'm quick enough to cover the line if they do happen to go down the line. So, and I think most teams will generally go cross court anyway. Like I don't think, unless you've got a team that just is super accurate, that just can like rip winners down the line, at will, then I think it's, and even when you watch the pros, all the best doubles teams in the world tend to, stand, well, the net player tends to stand a bit more central. And even though, yes, they are at risk for getting past, they are very quick to get back, but also their partners are ready to switch across and cover the line. So I think that's one of those things where I think for my next few doubles matches, it might be a bit of a risk for me and something I might be a bit uncomfortable with, but I'm going to try to position myself a little bit more in the middle of the net to try to poach more. Not so close that I'm leaving a massive gap open, but just being really ready to cross, because I just don't think I'm, I think I'm not helping my partner out enough at the net when he's having to hit so many ground strokes that really could be volleys. So that's one room for improvement. On the other side, I definitely think my returns. Yeah, I definitely feel like my returns could have been better. I returned okay at times, but one thing I did notice was that even though they tended to target my backhand, I still felt like I wasn't reading the ball that well to the backhand side, or not that I wasn't reading it to my backhand, but I felt like I was late quite a bit. I wasn't moving to the shot, I wasn't able to sort of hit over it, hit a topspin return. I was mostly like trying to just bunt it back or slice it back. And a lot of the time it was like on the back foot or on the a defensive shot. And yeah, the balls were just flying off my racket. So I did tend to miss a few returns on the backhand side that I really feel like I should have been ready for, because I know that on the forehand side, the forehand's my strength. So I know that if it does go to my forehand, if they do serve to my forehand, I'm confident I don't need as much time to hit the ball. Whereas on the backhand side, I think I almost should prepare more for backhand returns, knowing that good opponents, good doubles players will tend to target my backhand, or in general, our backhands, assuming that backhand is our weaker shot, which for the most part, I guess it is, especially with single-handed backhands. So yeah, that was probably my room for improvement. Potentially, you know, I felt like I served okay, but I still feel like I'm not always hitting my spots. So it could be something a bit more of a deliberate focus on where I'm hitting my serve as opposed to how I'm hitting it. So instead of thinking like I'm going to hit with a lot of spin, I'm going to hit a slice serve, I'm just focusing on, okay, I'm just going to hit body, T, body, wide. You know, they're kind of the three main serves that I'm aiming for. I'm not really worried about how much what I'm doing with the ball. That'll come naturally. So if I'm going T and in my head I'm going to hit a slice serve, I don't need to think about it too much. I'm just aiming for that spot and just trying to just basically slice it. So yeah, but I think I did serve pretty well overall. I only got broken the one time. So really, I don't think I can complain too much about my serve, but maybe a slight tweak to my thinking around the serve as opposed to like technique wise, specifically like how I'm hitting the ball. So yeah, they're my takeaways, both positive and room for improvements. But yeah, in the end, you know, the day ended up being a draw. So, you know, we won a doubles, lost a doubles, and the singles we only got through a handful of games before we had to call it off. So that puts us second on the ladder at this stage. And yeah, for my next week coming up, I'm actually rostered off. So we've got 5 players available, and yeah, this is my week off. So my next video, I'll be talking about something else. I'll probably do a video on something to do with the tour, especially given we've got the French Open coming up. So yeah, next video will be non-pennant, non-club competition related, and then the week after will be back to evaluating my pennant matches. So yeah, anyway guys, very keen to hear how your club competitions or how your tournaments are going. Yeah, please comment below on how you've been playing, any, you know, tricky opponents you've played against, you know, any good wins, any tough losses, the learnings, both positive and, you know, room for improvements. I'm always keen to hear feedback and how your tennis is going. So yeah, as always guys, please like and subscribe for more tennis and life related content. Cheers guys.